Hello, family. Welcome back to Landline, your direct link to all things comedy, politics, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper, and frequent nuisance in the activist and comedy worlds. Let's get dialed in. I think we know what today is going to be about. The shooting. The shooting of Donald J. Trump. And everything that's happened since. I watched the video. I think I was like one of the first people once it started to get reported on Twitter to see it. And I immediately was in my feelings. And not because I was saddened necessarily. I'll just say this. He got clipped in the ear. And I'm pretty sure it was right ear. So it's his gay ear. It's now pierced. And look, it is a very dangerous game when presidential candidates get shot at. But I'll tell you this. It's not un-American. Okay. I've heard since this happened, so Trump is fine. He's like more than fine. He's walking around. He had the wherewithal to throw his fist up using a black power sign. I'm like, you forgot to open your hand and face it towards the sky, sir. I think you are confused about which iconography is for you. But since then, I've heard every Democrat out there kind of, do you know what? I want to pause for a second. There's this clip, this comedy clip that I cannot get out of my mind. Okay, so Shane Gillis is one of my favorite comedians, and he does a pretty phenomenal Trump impression. But he was in the Comedy Cellar in New York, I think last year, and essentially did this bit that almost foreshadowed this moment. So just give me a second. Let me hit you with that right quick.
Of all the presidents, I think it's fair to say Donald Trump would be the funniest one to see get shot. Just because he'd be in the middle of a speech talking shit. Just, you're gay. The shooter would be coming at him and be like, sit down, get down. What a loser, get down, sit down. But just the noise he would make when he got hit. Even if you love Donald Trump, it would be funny. As soon as he got hit, he'd be like, ah!
Okay. That's all I've been hearing since it happened. Ah! It's kind of perfect. I can't think of a better sound for the thing I saw. That being said, every politician that's come out of there, every politician on the Democratic side, from that moment on, has said officially there's no place in America for political violence. I've heard Biden say it. I saw Obama say it. Even Pelosi said it. This to me is a very surprising statement. It's about as surprising as America identifying itself as the land of the free when chattel slavery was going on. I'm sure America being the land of the free was a surprise to black people, indigenous people, everywhere. Hell, even the indentured laborers. So it's very odd to hear them. So, but we'll get into it, but let's put America's violent history on the back burner and locate it right here. It's very weird for a statement like, America is no place, there's no place in America for political violence. Well, to be honest with you, I mean, Pelosi is one of the people who said it. And it was her husband, Paul, who was hit over the head with a hammer in his home when somebody who was a MAGA supporter broke in, looking to kill Pelosi, and instead found Paul and cracked his skull open with a hammer. Like, this is that Trump. When you're saying there's no place in America for political violence, I think it's so important for us to, like, list what that violence is for a moment. Like, are we talking about this single moment? Because what's concerning to me is I believe that our politicians need to, well, they have a responsibility, the truth is they really do, to sort of speak to this kind of violence, but how can you treat it as if it's a silo? As if this hasn't been the result. Like, this action is not the result of gasoline being poured on the fire by Trump and his white supremacist fascist values and the people who support him. I just want to frame something for you before I get into everything that he's done. The ADL, which is no fan of the left, truly not a fan of the left, especially now, has a statistic that I find very compelling. 75% of extremism in America between 2016 and 2020 has been right-wing extremism. 4%, 4% of that has been what they call left-wing extremism. Think about everything you've seen in the media and in the news about, left-wing actions and Antifa and how dangerous the left is and how the left is a threat to American values and American democracy. 4%. 4% versus 75%. Those are just the years between when Trump kind of came into the political game and now. Imagine what that's going to look like later. Let's not forget, and I know that some of you were with me and definitely breathed a sigh of relief when you saw the identity of the shooter, because we know what country we live in and we know what the political realities are right now. And I mean, it's like this. I shouldn't have to feel relief about that. It's so gross to have to do that, to say, oh, thank God it wasn't. But he was a 20-year-old named Crooks and, was a pretty, he was a very short life, but in that time, he is primarily voted Republican and, for all intents and purposes, considers himself a Republican. I did see some segments on Fox News where they tried to suggest that maybe that had something to do with DEI. And I'm just like, y'all niggas will blame us for anything. We weren't even there. It wasn't even our guy. But no, DEI did this because Secret Service. Did you know? Because I'm sure, like some of you, I even wondered, where were they at? Because if you listen to all of these recordings and reports from what happened on the ground and people who were there, they're like, they all saw the shooter. They looked at him, they waited for him, but he took a shot first. That's actually a rule. It is a rule that if you are legally, they cannot take a shot at somebody until the person goes through with that act of violence. And I've seen a lot of right-wing freaks kind of push back on that and say this. And well, look, I'll just be honest with you. There was more attempts on Barack Obama's life than like any other president in history. And so it's weird to hear them talk about this right now. But I will say that the reason why the Secret Service can't just go shooting people willy-nilly, I can't believe I have to explain this, is because a telescope could be a gun in that moment, right? A flashlight could be a gun in that moment. It's actually a good thing that we don't have Secret Service police just shooting everybody. Well, actually, it's interesting because what right-wing people are suggesting is that everybody then should just be treated the way that black people are treated in America, if we're being honest, right? Anything in your hands could be a gun. I want to be clear about the man that we are talking about, though, when we say, and I've heard the Democrats say again and again, America has no place for political violence. They're talking about Trump. They're talking about the man who, in every mainstream media segment, has been talking about how he is going to dismantle American democracy as we know it. I've heard Colbert and Rachel Maddow, the two most well-known lesbians in the country, say, this is fascism. People have written multiple books on it saying, hey, this is here. He has a plan in place, right, that he's now walked back from, right? He's walked back from that plan to dismantle the federal government. And I got to tell you, it saddens me greatly to see how many people don't seem to mind that, and how many young men in particular, because I'm in the Manosphere, we'll get to that in a minute, though. Let's stay in the pocket with Trump and what he's done. This is the same guy who lied about the results in the elections in 2020, right? He lost. There is literally no evidence generally of election fraud. It just doesn't exist. To be quite frank, we don't have enough of an engagement across America for voters for there to be any serious kind of election fraud. But I'm thinking of the election officials, the regular people like you and I, who were working and counting those votes and who had their lives threatened and the lives of their children threatened. And this isn't conjecture. This is fact. I'm thinking of Ruby Freeman, an older black woman from Georgia who's like a mother and a grandmother and all these. Listen to the testimonies. They were terrified for their life. And she had to leave her home at a certain point because there were so many threats coming at her. This is what he's done. He denied the election. He encouraged and incited violence against the people who are doing their democratic duty, right? And then add the fact that when he still didn't get his way, this is the same guy who then called up elected officials and was like, I need you to find me 11,000 votes. I need you to find me 11,000 votes, right? That's a winner. That's the messiah right now for a lot of these folks on the right. Then there's the fact that when that didn't work, he staged a coup. He staged a coup. In order for a coup to happen, you need to have a face and a body that represents that change, that changeover from one power structure to another. That's what he did. January 6th, if you don't know what I'm talking about, right? Where I watched, like, there was a lot of khakis and military gear that, you know, you can find on Amazon. It was really awkward. It was a very awkward thing to watch. But even I was like, hey, don't hit that cop in the face. He was just trying to protect AOC or protect Pelosi. Like, I'm telling you, the Overton window has gone so far to the right that I sound like a damn patriot at times. It's very disturbing to me. But what I'm saying is, that was one of the most dangerous things that we've ever seen. He called those same people, many of whom, at least some of the leadership is now in federal prisons, heroes, right? What happens when you call somebody a hero? Do this more. You're something important to me. Do this more, right? So I got to tell you, if that's not enough, think about Charleston. Think about that Unite the Right March. Think about how many white supremacists have come out in defense of this guy. So when you hear somebody say, like Barack Obama or like Pelosi, America has no place for political violence. I'm not sure I understand what you mean. I'm going to give you this this Yiddish joke, okay? It's more like a story. It's like a little proverb. And when in doubt, you know, turn to black people, turn to Jewish people, whatever. So here's the joke. Here's how it goes. Two Jewish men are waiting on the side of the road to kill Hitler. I think that's a really great line. I would read the story forever if books started that way. Two Jewish men sit on the side of the road waiting for Hitler to come. And they wait and they wait and they wait. He doesn't come. After waiting for much longer than they anticipated, one asks, geez, where is the guy? And the other man turns to him and says, I don't know. I hope nothing happened to him. Right? They're there to kill Hitler. That's their job. That's what they're there for. And because he's not coming up the road, they say, I don't know. I hope nothing happened to him. Here's the thing. It is very odd to me in this moment, right? Because the question of empathy comes up, and there's always a fear that we have on the left. How far do we cross a particular line before we become like them, like the enemy, or like, you know, does this mean that I support a certain kind of violence? This is not a conversation that you have with a fascist. Do you understand? That's where we're at. It's not an empathy conversation. It's not an empathy conversation when somebody is saying, I'm going to eradicate or annihilate or put these particular people in concentration camps. It is not a lack of empathy when you say, I don't support the person who's going to dismantle the Department of Education, who's going to dismantle the DOJ, which, look, I have my criticisms, but they would use that to then butcher and commit murder against like thousands of people who are sitting in prisons, many of whom, an extraordinary, evil amount of whom are black people and brown people in this country. I'm trying to wrap my head, though, around what it means and the absolute delusion of having empathy for fascists, right? You can have empathy for people, but you cannot have empathy for fascism because that's how it grows. That's how it grows. And what I'm not clear about is why in this moment, our so-called political leaders can't hold both sides of that. That's a great moment to say both sides, where it's like, can we hold the fact that somebody got shot at and we have this duty to denounce violence in America, whatever that means, and also say, that being said, that violence would not exist in the first place in this way if we had things like gun control and regulation, right? It wouldn't exist in the first place if we weren't telling people, hey, you actually don't matter, and who cares if I take your rights away? I really don't care. These rights are hard won. They were hard fought and hard won. Nothing has ever been given to folks in this country. So I'm just very confused about the hypocrisy in this moment. What does concern me is you have this whole thing that's going to happen across the right. messianic, all this stuff. That's how you say that word, right? When somebody's a messiah? Okay, good. People are nodding at me. It's one of those words that I've only read and have no idea how to say out loud. I take chances. I'm just out here taking risks, you guys. I'm just taking risks. But they already have a messiah complex around Donald Trump. Now they talk about he survived a shooting. Can you imagine if it was AOC who got shot at? And what the right would be saying then? They'd be saying, I'm sorry you missed. I'm sorry you missed. Or this is what you get. Or you deserved it. We don't need to devolve to that. Openly. We don't need to devolve to that openly. It's a piercing. Mike Tyson took a bigger bite out of Evander Holyfield's ear than the damage that this guy has. And so I am deeply concerned at this particular moment, not at what happened, but at what's coming. So I want to preface this with, we're going to be okay. Like we're literally going to be okay. But it's going to be an ugly few weeks. One of the key things that I'm concerned about has very little to do with us and has more to do with the media. Trump won that election back in 2016 because of how much media play he got. Oh my God, the broadcast networks loved him. They loved talking about him. They loved putting him on television. Their ratings skyrocketed. It gave people an enemy, right? An enemy, or I shouldn't say people, I should say us, and it backfired. It backfired because everything that we see on television is run by the same 10 people. I always think about his name's Aaron something. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. He's the one he created the Boondocks. And I was watching a speech of his where he was talking about, you guys remember Martin Luther King? Think about him. Think about Martin Luther King and the March on Selma. And think about how that dominated, it was just across television. And that's one of the most iconic, memorable moments in American history. And he says, you wouldn't see Martin Luther King doing that today. They simply wouldn't allow him to play on television that way. The rules and the game has changed around broadcast media, but we do have social media, and we do have a means of putting our own stories out there in the way that we think is best, and how we talk about this moving forward matters so much. Here's what the Democrats could do. So we talked about the context, but here's what the Democrats need to do right now. If you want to bump Trump out of the media cycle, give us a new candidate. Listen, necks will break. We'll be forgetting that Trump got a chip in his ear two days down the road. That's assuming if Biden finally steps down. If he doesn't, I've got some things that he can do that could get him out of trouble and get us out of it with him. Come out as bisexual. If Biden came in as bisexual, that would be an interesting story to me. Biden, it's already there. It's not much of a stretch. I got to be honest, though. I do not want to be in the group chats with him. I don't want to be at the LGBTQ caucus and have to be like, what's up, Biden? The other thing that we could do is create our own kind of scare, right? Our own little scare. But the problem is we cannot. I'm going to just tell you the truth. If we were to clip Biden in the ear, if we were like to shoot Biden and we clipped his ear, I don't know that he would notice. I'm not sure that he would notice that he got shot in the ear. I also am concerned that rather than blood coming out, dust will. I'm very concerned that just a little powder of dust. You ever open a new jar of protein? I'm afraid that it'll just float out like that. So that's not an option either. So I'm just out here being the most serious thing in the world happened, but let me get these jokes out for it quick. Again, the key thing I think that would shift everything and everything that we need to happen will take place in the event that they announce a new candidate. That's what I'm curious about. That's what I want to see. We got moved out of the cycle. Trump was finally being talked about as a fascist overlord who's got the Supreme Court in his back pocket. And we were talking about whether or not Biden is fit, whether or not he is fit to stay in office. Now what we're seeing is Trump being spoken about as a legitimate political candidate. What we're seeing is Trump being talked about as if he's an underdog. And what we're seeing is Trump kind of being touted as this like survivor. I'm in the Manosphere. I mentioned this earlier, and it's just I enjoy dumb bro talk. I enjoy beefcake Play-Dohs. And even I was pretty bummed out at like who's come out. I mean, there's the people you expect, like the roaches, like academics and Elon Musk. But I am like, you saw people jump at the opportunity to claim Trump. There was a culture here in the States, even post his presidency, where people were kind of, I don't know, had a human amount, a dignified amount of shame on supporting this guy openly. Not anymore. That's gone. I saw, Logan Paul, Jake Paul all come out. He's actually been in the Manosphere quite a bit. You've seen Ryan Garcia sort of talk about him. These guys, once you start making millions, you don't want to get taxed on those millions, so they just default go with Trump. I'd like to believe that they don't support his more draconian, disgusting politics, but that's not for me. Because to be honest, it doesn't matter what the incentive is. If that's how you do it, that's what you support. There's another candidate there, but I really hate how much of how I have to bend so much to try to make something actionable these days. It feels like I'm doing mental gymnastics, and I know that you are too. So here's the things that we can do, okay? We don't have to engage with the tsunami of hate coming at us. We don't. Yes, there's going to be all these weeks of messianic this, and this guy's gonna, and you guys on the left, but just remember, 75% of extremist incidents in this country, death caused by extremism, violence caused by extremism, is far-right extremism, right? There is no like left extremisms, but you're going to see them try to put this on us because I can't explain it, but there seems to be an almost sexual inclination to identify as a victim for Republicans. It's very awkward to witness. It's super awkward. Like, we're called like tree huggers, but I'm like, I'd rather be a tree hugger than a dick rider, bitch. Like, get it the fuck together. Oh my God. If you are voting for the same guy that like Andrew Tate loves and like Elon Musk, I'm so deeply concerned for what's going on in your head. How we engage right now matters. Do yourself a favor. Do us all a favor. I'm making sure that I'm doing it. I always verify everything, but I'm verifying everything. Is this fact correct? Is this segment real? I posted an article on IG that said, today we're all MAGA. And I was like, no the fuck we're not. But I had to look it up. And there was another article, a headline, and this is one of my favorites. It essentially was like, will black voters support Trump more post getting shot? That was a black dude that wrote that. I had to look and make sure that he was black, that we weren't being duped. But I'm telling you, he's a bald guy and he's very chocolatey, and his brain is just about as smooth as his head. That is a dangerous thing. He's a journalist, so-called, and a head of the diversity, equity, and inclusion or whatever at Forbes. I'm like, oh, so it doesn't exist. I'm like, nigga, you got put in that for diversity and inclusion, the same one that you're trying to, like, what? Make it make sense. He's got a shinier brain, a smoother brain than a bald tire. I just don't even, just ice. You just try to run something on it. It's just ice, just smooth. Anyway, just when in doubt and when not sure, just think of Shane Gillis making the sound of Trump getting shot to see us through. We just got to go there and see us through these hard times. I'm still working on my thoughts on this. I think we're going to see what's happening in the coming days. I want to see, I went over a little bit about we can do, the other thing is like post and talk amongst yourselves. You don't need to fight. The one silver lining of all this, outside of the fact that, nope, I shouldn't call that a silver lining, but I think you know what I mean. Outside of the incident that happened, I think one silver lining is nobody's changing their minds. Whoever was going to vote Democrat was going to do that already, and whoever was going to vote Republican was going to do that already. For everybody else, we need to push back on the media narrative that we're going to be impacted with. And I don't know, we're We might not have the resources, but I'll be damned if we don't make some good ass culture work. So I trust us in that. I think we got into the nitty gritty of it. I think we got into, I want to just crack so many jokes, but I do need to be mindful of the CIA, which I think would also be dismantled. I'm just like, are we on the same side now? How awkward is that? Let's watch the CIA also just comes out as bisexual. I don't have time for this. I really don't. We are not bedfellows, sir. That being said, I believe in us. I think we're going to be just fine. This is another bump in the road, but this shouldn't change anything for any of us. Try to enjoy some of the material that comes out in a safe way and keep your best jokes offline maybe, but definitely tell them to me. Anyway, on to the next. Let's hit that question of the day. What's up on the VMs?
Hi, Future. This is John from LA. Thank you so much for all the hard work. I had a question. With everybody talking about Biden stepping down, who do you think the right person would be to step up and make sure that Trump doesn't win as president? Thanks.
Ooh, good question. Good question. Who is the best candidate? Who's the best candidate? I'll tell you who the front runners are. You've got Kamala Harris. She is currently being tested by the White House. And you've got Gavin Newsom, the pretty white man who is the governor of California. Look, I'd rather Newsom than Kamala Harris. I just got to say it. I would rather have Newsom than Kamala Harris. I think I would need to see more of today's Kamala Harris and what her platform would be, because she has not been active in many a year. I like her just fine as a person to the extent that she's a Howard girl, and then I'm not interested anymore. I would love to see what her actual platform would be, because that's key. Because to be honest with you, there's who I would like to see, there's who is likely to be the upfront runners, but then there's the platforms, and that's what I vote on. I'm like, well, if I could vote here in America, but that's what I vote on in my heart. Which platform supports and best aligns with some of the principles of the right, and who, to be honest, has enough gaps or connections in community where they can be leveraged or tweaked in order to go and present and kind of honor more leftist principles, because it seems like they don't do that without some twisting of the arm, and even then it's hard to come by. But I'm more inclined towards a Newsom at this particular moment, because I can see actionable things around abortion, actionable things around trans rights, actionable things around the environment. None of it is enough. But I'm actually seeing movement and progress, whereas Kamala just stopped wearing beige. That's all we've seen so far. Like, she's speaking a little bit more coherently, but I'm just like, what do you think? I'm going to make a decision on Kamala Harris? Do I look like I just fell out of the coconut tree? All right. Couldn't resist that. I could not resist. I couldn't resist it. Anyway, I love y'all. I know this is rough, but honestly, we are solid. We're good. Don't let this be one more thing that feels like something we can't overcome. We've overcome it all. So with that, let's hit that ending. I love y'all. Just thank you for listening to Landline. It really means the world to us. This is like a labor of love kind of endeavor. We're available on Spotify and Apple and pretty much every streaming platform out there very soon to come. Don't forget to send your questions to landlinewithjfk@gmail.com. Hit it in a voice note though, we love it. Shout out to Alyssa and KR and the whole Landline team, and shout out to you, the listeners, that make it all possible.